Yeah, we want to check in with everybody on a particular question. And what I'd like to hear from you in a word or a phrase, if you type in the question box, how you think your elect are doing right now, folks who are waiting for their initiation, or your candidates who might have been expecting to be received into full communion. What do you think they're feeling? What's their attitude? What's their morale level? Just type a word or a phrase in the questions box there, just so we all check in. Good but restless, disappointed, stressed, anxious,
Anxious,
sad, isolated,
hopeful,
anticipation,
depressed, oh
uh,
goodness,
uh,
hungering for the sacraments,
good spirits, but they understand, good but disappointed,
calm and prayerful,
anxious,
nervous,
uh,
frustrated,
no info or communication from the bishop.
oh
Oh,
no,
that's sad.
resigned to God's will,
Patiently waiting.
oh, feeling a bit jilted, goodness.
Yeah, oh gosh. Restless, but hope is coming with prayers,
Staying connected,
yeah.
happy,
Sad,
waiting patiently,
hopeful, waiting, lots and lots of waiting, lots and lots of isolated, tired of waiting. Man, me too. Okay, joyful, good. We got some joy. That's good. Happy for the elect in our group who was initiated. Oh, so somebody was initiated, so they're happy for that person.
We have so many emotions.
Yeah.
Throughout this time, and I think one good thing is that we are learning to attend a little bit more gently with people's emotions, because all of us are everywhere on the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So
and on different days, you know.
I know.
Some days Diana will just be like, so like the world is ending, and I'm like, it's okay, dear, it's okay. And the next day it's me. It's like I can't find toilet paper, you know. And she's saying, it'll be all right, it'll be all right, you know. So it's all of us are going through that all the time.
But especially for our elect and our candidates, on top of everything else that they're going through, is this sense of feeling jilted, feeling frustrated, feeling anxious, but also hopeful and patient and understanding. And so God is present in all of that. So one thing that we can do, one thing that Christians are good at doing, is to offer to God all of these emotions, everything that we are, and to bring that into prayer. And so I wrote this prayer actually a long time ago for catechumens who discerned that they were not yet ready for that particular Easter vigil and decided to continue on in their formation. And then just recently I rewrote it, I revised it for so many of our elect and candidates who, not because they weren't ready, but because our world wasn't ready for this, have had to delay the celebration of their sacraments. And so I wrote this prayer. You can find it on Team RCIA. Let's bring to prayer all of these emotions that you've shared, and keep in mind all of our elect and candidates and their godparents and families who are waiting with them. And I'll revise this prayer as it's found on the website so that it becomes our prayer as well. So let us remember that we are in the holy presence of God. I know it's not a race or a test of will, Lord, yet we all feel a bit lost now that the Triduum has ended and the baptismal waters remain just out of reach. In this time of waiting, may our elect and our candidates receive your grace in patience that hopes with all who long to gather at your table, in compassion that abides with all aching to embrace again, and in mercy that anoints the sorrowing with a promise of joy's return. Let us all be alert to the opportunities each day to fall more deeply in love with your word and with your people who live that word by their faith and courage. Teach our elect to trust that the new life promised to them is already theirs, for Christ is living and ever at their side. And help us all wait in joyful hope for the day we know is coming, when all our longings will soon be filled with your love that knows no bounds. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Very good. The prayer is on the website there, teamrcia.com. I think it's the second post, so just scroll down and you'll see a prayer when baptism must be delayed. All right.
Well, what we're going to talk about today are four things. So we're going to start with why the celebration of the initiation, all of the initiation rites, are so important. And really, for those of us that have been doing it a while, we realize that this is a faith journey, and it starts with evangelization. It starts with the seekers first encountering Christ. And once they have that real encounter with Christ, once they have that real connection and want to grow more deeply, then they begin a path. They begin a way of faith that starts with the rite of acceptance. And then that goes through that right after the rite of acceptance. They're in this formation period for as long as it takes. Now, I know some of us are on kind of a school year model, and we kind of finish everybody between September and February. But really what the rite expects is that people are growing more deeply in love with Christ and learning how to live as a Christian. It's really a training process. And once they have been trained, once they have learned how to live as a Christian and they have that really deep love of Christ, then we discern with them together, we discern that they're ready now to go to the rite of election. In most of our communities, we celebrated the rite of election. And once the catechumens celebrate the rite of election, they enter into a particular kind of preparation, more of a spiritual preparation, a deep time of preparation and enlightenment. And during that time of enlightenment, they celebrate three crucial rites, the scrutinies. And these are not optional. They're absolutely required and essential.
We're going to get to all of those details about the specific rites,
Mm-hmm.
but in general,
so
the rites themselves do things.
Yeah, exactly.
They are effective.
Exactly.
In the sense that they effect the grace of God in the lives of the people who celebrate it.
Yes.
Right? And so the initiation rites are not just secondary. It's not just formation spotted with rituals.
Right. It's the other way around. It's the rituals themselves that do something and form the elect, form the catechumens, form all of us who are going through the rites. They form the community. So as much as we miss Sunday Mass, we should also be missing the rites, the initiation rites that we're not able to celebrate throughout this period.
And so shall we take a look at what exactly those rites are then?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here we go.
So what are the key initiation rites? That's what I was beginning to explain there.
And
you can find them in the RCI in the table of contents. If you look in the table of contents, and they're the same. The initiation rites are the same throughout the world. In English, we have basically two versions because the U.S. edition adapted some of the rites and rearranged some of the paragraphs. But the essential core of the rites are the same everywhere. Okay, so as I said, we begin with that period of evangelization, and once they encounter Christ, then they celebrate the rite of acceptance, and that rite does something. That's why the baptized do not celebrate the rite of acceptance, because they're already part of the body of Christ. So the rite of acceptance welcomes the inquirers into the household of faith, into the household of God.
And once they celebrate that rite, their identity is changed. They're called catechumens.
Right.
They have, they are members of the household of God. So they're not waiting. They're not like outsiders. They are members of our family, right? So during this period, this is when we're doing our formation. They're participating in the life of the church, and that is the key part of their formation itself.
And I should say as we start this explanation of how these rites work, I think we might have some folks with us who are not part of the Catholic tradition, because this chat got advertised in some of the some other denominations' ways of doing the catechumenate process. So if you have questions about the way we're doing it that aren't familiar to you, go ahead and put those in the question box, and we'll try to do that.
And this may seem very basic for many of you as well, but it's a good reminder for all of us to know specifically what rituals we're talking about. And also because we tend to connect these rituals to specific times of year.
Yes.
And now we can't do that.
Right.
We have to recall that the rituals are not calendared. They are scheduled by each person's progress.
Yeah.
And so how are we going to translate these rituals to this new circumstance?
Right. So we're in, as we said, in the period of the catechumenate, folks learn how to live as a Christian. They come into that deep relationship with Christ, and then when they're ready, when they've kind of gotten to that point, think of it like being dating and being engaged. And how do you know when you're ready for the wedding? You know, it's different for everybody. Okay, so when they're ready, then they celebrate the rite of election. And most in the United States, anyway, most of our catechumens were able to celebrate the rite of election, those who were ready. And then throughout that period of purification and enlightenment, the rites that do something that purify and enlighten the elect are the scrutinies. And the rites say these bring the elect into a deeper understanding of the mystery of Christ. And it's the rites themselves that do that. Now, technically, the rite allows for the bishop to dispense from one, and in serious cases, two of the scrutinies. And that has happened in most dioceses in the US, because in most places, we were, like in the Diocese of San Jose, we were able to celebrate the first scrutiny. And then the restrictions went into place, and the elect here did not celebrate the second and third scrutiny. And I'm not sure if the bishop dispensed from those here, but in lots and lots of places, your bishops have dispensed from the celebration of the second and third scrutinies.
So Jessica had a question specifically about that. In her diocese, her bishop has dispensed the elect from the scrutinies. And so as we recalled, the bishop can do that. That is his right to dispense from two.
Yeah, technically, if your elective celebrate no scrutinies, then they will, you know, if you're going to go strictly by what the rite says, you have to celebrate at least one scrutiny before their baptism. Now, I would say if they missed, even if they've been dispensed, in our diocese, let's say they've all celebrated their first scrutiny, and then they've been dispensed from the next two. I would treat that dispensation like a dispensation from Sunday Mass. You don't have to do it, but you're not prohibited from doing it, and we should want to do it. We should miss doing it because of how important it is for the formation of the elect and the community. So think of the dispensation as, you know, with the requirement is lifted, but the desire is not. The intent and the desire is still there.
And now that we have begun Easter, and after Easter we'll have a long stretch of ordinary time, we're praying, once the shelter in place has lifted, we'll have some time to celebrate all of these things. And so it's not so much the sense that we have a deadline to catch. We want to enter into the entire process of the rite itself. Do you want to do a question?
Go ahead.
Let's see. So Jerry is one of our friends from the Christian tradition, and they have a rite in the Episcopalian Church called the Recognition of Ministries in the Church and the World, similar to the Lutheran Affirmation of Vocation, which I believe takes place at the end. Both are usually celebrated on Pentecost. And so I'm guessing that would be similar to our Catholic, the end of the first part of mystagogy, the 50 days of post-baptismal catechesis and mystagogy. In the US, that's a 1-year cycle there. So I think this can translate as well for our Christian brothers and sisters, in that sense of the affirmation can take place at the end of this period of reflection on the sacraments.
One question that we got from Sherry is, can we celebrate these scrutinies with the baptized candidates? And the answer is no. The scrutinies are only for the unbaptized elect. And the reason for that is because it is a preparation for initiation. And the baptized are already initiated. The preparation for baptized candidates is more like our own preparation for celebrating the Easter season. So we go through the Lenten disciplines of prayer and fasting and almsgiving, charity, and particularly celebrating the sacrament of reconciliation. And so that's the proper place of preparation for the baptized candidates.
Let's see. There was one here, Sandy. Do you want to do that one?
Sure, go ahead.
So Sandy Marshall is asking, when we are able to do a scrutiny before initiation and we've been dispensed, from 2 of them, we should do the 3rd one, right?
Yeah, I would say that would be my, if you're only going to celebrate one scrutiny, let's say you haven't celebrated any scrutinies and now you're going to do one of them, only one of them before initiation, I would choose the 3rd one because it is the most powerful and it's the deepest. But it really feels like a rupture to me to just do that one because the other 2 build up to it. But that's because of the weird time we're in. That may be the pastoral solution in your area.
We have a couple of questions on how to celebrate scrutinies during this unusual time. And on the website at tmarci.com, we did do a long video on how to celebrate the scrutinies in this time of coronavirus.
Yeah.
So go and watch that video. There's also a summary transcript so that you can just scan through that video too to see some ideas on how to do this.
Joaquin is saying, I did the scrutinies online, and Joaquin, that would be like Mass online. It's a prayerful experience and helpful in some way, but it's not an actual celebration of the scrutiny in the same way Mass is not an actual celebration of Mass. We can't watch Mass and consider that, the full conscious and active participation of the body of Christ. So we need to all be together to celebrate the scrutinies just like we do with any other sacramental celebration. These are sacramentals, I guess, is small s, but still requires the body of Christ gathered to celebrate them.
And Patrick makes a very good point, and I'll read this here. It's a little long, but it's worthy for all of us to hear. While I appreciate the optimism in suggesting that the upcoming ordinary time will afford us an opportunity to celebrate the rites that we've missed, I would also anticipate that the coronavirus will go through waves a lot like the Spanish flu. In light of this, I'm looking to just make up what is essential and celebrate the sacraments with the elect. Furthermore, since summertime is not good for most parishes in terms of having gatherings, I would suspect that this would unnecessarily delay things, if we spread things out like that.
Yeah, this is a good opportunity to say the calendar that I'm going to go through and what's posted on the website is like an ideal of what all the options that are available to us. But we've got folks here, as Diana said, from South Africa, from Canada, from Australia, from way different regions in the United States. And different dioceses have gone through different waves of the coronavirus, different levels of intensity. And so you're going to have to adapt all this for your particular situation. So what I'm hope to propose here is here's everything that's possible. And then from that, you sort of have to pick and choose what's best in your particular area. Okay.
And yes, someone's asking about recording. Everyone's going to get a copy.
Mm-hmm. Right. So let's just start with the principle of how to, how we decide when we're going to do this. Yeah. The first step is to choose a date for baptism, in baptism, confirmation, Eucharist, for the sacraments of initiation. And then everything else about the calendar flows from that. So I know just north of us in the Archdiocese of San Francisco, and I think Los Angeles, but San Francisco for sure, is heavily counting on being able to do this at Pentecost. Because of some of the recent news that's come out in California, I'm not hopeful that they're going to be able to do that. I think we'll still be in lockdown. So if Pentecost is available in your area, I would think that would be ideal because it's still within the Easter season. Pentecost has a lot of baptismal imagery to it, and the delay is not that long. So I would go for that if it's available in your area. But in the Diocese of San Jose and probably most of California, I'm going to guess that that is off the table. And in other parts of the country, I'm sure it will be off the table as well.
And if you do celebrate on Pentecost, you still want to celebrate as many of the other rites that had not yet been celebrated.
Yes,
correct?
so at least one scrutiny, probably during a weekday, because you wouldn't want to do necessarily want to do a scrutiny at a Sunday Mass in the Easter season. Yeah. The presentation of the Creed, the presentation of the Lord's Prayer, so those all might be done at weekday Masses or small gatherings of Liturgy of the Word celebrations before Pentecost.
And one very important thing about Sunday Mass in Easter, the Easter Sundays of the Easter season, you have to use the readings and the Mass texts for that Sunday. Those are like the highest Sundays of the year.
Right.
And so you can't really change anything for that.
Right.
So you cannot celebrate a scrutiny on a Sunday.
Because you have to use the scrutiny readings for the scrutiny. So you need to celebrate on a weekday.
On a weekday.
You don't have to do it at Mass, though. You can do a word service with, during the weekday with those readings. Okay.
So this has a lot to do with a hierarchy of feast days in the Catholic calendar, which you can find in your Roman Missal, or if you have an Ordo, you can find that. But Easter Sundays of the Easter season really are set, and it's hard to celebrate these other rituals during the Easter season itself.
Yeah, and somebody had a question about the presentations can also be done in a word service. They don't need to be done at a Mass. So all of this can be done in Liturgy of the Word, except for initiation itself. That has to be at a Mass, obviously.
And Jimena's reminding us that this is the same rule for solemnities.
Yeah.
So holy days of obligation, things that are ranked as a solemnity on the liturgical calendar, you cannot change the readings, you cannot change the prayers itself. So scrutinies wouldn't work for those particular days.
Brian's asking which ritual Mass we'd use. You'd use the rite that's in the RCI itself. You'd use that rite for baptism.
So he's asking the ritual Mass for baptism? Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So just to reiterate, Pentecost is a possibility, but a very low probability.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So then the next choice would be for you to look through the summer calendar, and which Sunday has both the best pastoral possibility for your diocese and the best readings, the best celebration of readings for your diocese. And this should be ideally a diocesan choice. The RCIN says, in fact, if you're going to celebrate baptism outside of the Easter Vigil, then the bishop is the one to decide when that celebration would be. Now, the bishop could say, all you pastors, I delegate to you the authority to choose which Sunday. So you could wind up having parishes with different Sundays. That just depends on your diocese. But my suggestion, if the bishop ever asked me, I would say, Bishop, you should pick one Sunday for the whole diocese to celebrate this.
Or one day, since the day that we're going to look at is not a Sunday.
Right. So, so the day just for the exercise, I'm suggesting that we pick the Solemnity of the Assumption on August 15th as the day, and that's a Saturday this year, and that works as a sort of a gray line between Saturday and Sunday because we're used to celebrating the Saturday evening Mass as the Sunday, vigil for Sunday. Okay, and I kind of like the Marian theme as a time of celebrating baptism because of the whole image of Mary as first disciple. Mary is the one who said, fully said yes to the Lord, all the things that we're asking the elect to do in their initiation. Now, a very good friend of mine, an expert on this, and she's much smarter than me, Rita Ferrone, she disagrees with me about this, and she wrote a little comment on the blog post we put on the website about this, and she thinks it should be on a Sunday. It should not be on a Marian feast. And so you can go read what Rita said. But the point is not which day, but the point is pick a day, and then the bishop will ordain, choose that, and then we'll do a calendar based on that day.
And one resource that we've talked about in previous videos about this recalendarization of the rites is from Max Johnson, The Rites of Christian Initiation, where he talks about how in our history, throughout the liturgical year, there are optimal days for baptism. And I think he named August 15 as one of them, you know, in the sense of the harvest, the gathering of the fullness of what we are anticipating our humanity to become, as modeled by the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And so, you know, take this example as just an example.
Yeah, it can be any Sunday. You know, but ideally you want to pick a Sunday where the readings kind of, well, actually the readings don't have to match exactly, because here's another key point about this, about moving it outside of the ordinary time. The moment whatever Sunday you pick for celebration, let's say it's going to be Sunday, August 16th, which is a Sunday. On that Sunday, we can use the readings for Easter Sunday, because August 16th is not a solemnity. So on August 16th, we can use the readings for Easter Sunday, and then for the next 8 Sundays, we can do the Easter cycle. So we can use the readings from the second Sunday of Easter, third Sunday of Easter, and so on throughout. So the elect have a period of mystagogical catechesis, a period of mystagogy. So you can really pick any Sunday, and if the readings aren't quite right, substitute the Easter Sunday readings.
Okay. So let's go through each of those rituals that we named as part of the initiation rites and see where they might fall if our initiation date is August 15 or that following
And you
Sunday.
just move, if you pick a different date, you just move the dates based on that. So the rite says, the RCI says, if we're going to celebrate initiation outside the usual time, we need to celebrate the rite of election about 6 weeks before we do the initiation. Now, most of us have celebrated the rite of election, but you may have catechumens who, because of the delay, are now ready for initiation. So you may want to celebrate, if that's your case, you may want to celebrate a rite of election with them 6 weeks before whenever your baptism is scheduled.
And with the rite of election, it's not a repeatable ritual. So if you have elect who have been elected at a rite of election, they do not celebrate that rite again. If you are going to celebrate the rite of election with your catechumens who had not celebrated that rite with your bishop, you do need to get permission from your bishop to celebrate that ritual in your parish with your pastor, or if you're lucky enough to get your bishop to celebrate that rite with your diocesan catechumens, that could be a possibility. But I think for the majority of us, at least in North America, we did get to celebrate the rite of election. So that's only if needed.
Right. So if you're going to celebrate the rite of election on July 5th, that's 6 weeks before August 15th, you could, that's the 14th Sunday of Ordinary Time. You can use those readings, or you also have the option of using the readings from the first Sunday of Lent, because August Ordinary Time 14 is not a solemnity.
Or more specifically, the readings for the rite of election.
Rite of election.
Which are not necessarily first Sunday of Lent.
Right. So you're doing, there is a ritual mass for the rite of election. That's what you're doing. Okay. All right.
Then the next ritual.
Then the next ritual, if you have not celebrated scrutiny on July 19th, the 16th Sunday of Ordinary Time, you'd celebrate that first scrutiny. Now, if like in San Jose, you've already done that, that might be a time where you could celebrate the presentation of the creed at a Sunday Mass if you've not done that. So that's an option for July 16th. And then July 19th, sorry.
The presentation of the creed requires a specific gospel. Oh wait, no.
That's the presentation of the Lord's Prayer.
I'm getting my presentations mixed up.
Yeah.
But yet, the celebration of the presentation of the creed at a Sunday Mass would be beautiful.
Yes.
Because the primary way that the creed is handed on is by the faithful speaking that creed aloud to your elect.
Yep. Now, if you do the scrutiny, if you do the first scrutiny, you have to use the readings for the scrutiny Mass, which is the Woman at the Well Gospel. You have to use those readings. If you do the creed, you can use the readings from that Sunday, or there's a list of readings in the RCIA for the presentation of the creed, and you can use those readings, the lectionary, for the presentation.
What you cannot do is combine the two
Right.
together,
You can't celebrate both together.
whether it's a coronavirus year or not. I've heard of some places that still combine a scrutiny with a presentation, and you can't do that ever.
Yep. Brian is asking if we need the bishop's permission to celebrate the scrutinies outside of ordinary time. No. Once the bishop decides that we're celebrating baptism outside the ordinary time, that automatically means you're given permission to celebrate all these rites outside the ordinary time. All right, then the second scrutiny would get celebrated then on July 26th. And again, you have to use the readings for that scrutiny, which is the man born blind.
And I think most parishes in North America had not celebrated the second scrutiny.
Yeah. And again, we talked about the dispensation thing. Just because you're dispensed doesn't mean you restricted from doing it. There should be that desire to do it if possible, if it's pastorally useful for the elect and for your community. And then the third scrutiny is celebrated on August 2nd, the 18th Sunday of ordinary time. And again, you need to use the ritual mass for the third scrutiny, which requires the readings for year A in Lent, which would be the raising of Lazarus. Mm-hmm.
So basically, anytime you celebrate a scrutiny, you need those gospel readings, because that is the heart of the scrutiny itself. That leads into the prayers of exorcism, of enlightenment for the elect.
Yep. And then on August 9th, the 19th Sunday of ordinary time, if we're in the Lenten cycle, that would be Palm Sunday, but we're not going to do Palm Sunday. So you might celebrate the presentation.
No, that would be the week of the 5th week of Lent.
Yeah, but the Sunday after that.
Oh, yes, Sunday after that.
Right.
Yes.
So one option we would have is to celebrate the presentation of the Lord's Prayer on a Sunday, which in Lent we couldn't do because it requires specific readings, specifically the Gospel, where in Matthew's Gospel, where the Lord's Prayer is given to the disciples. But in ordinary time, you can substitute the readings. So you could celebrate the presentation of the Lord's Prayer on August 9th in this imaginary calendar. If you cannot do it on a Sunday for some reason, you do it at a weekday liturgy, either Liturgy of the Word or Mass.
And this presentation requires the gospel reading.
Right. So you cannot do the readings from the Sunday. You'd have to substitute the readings that are in the lectionary for the presentation of the Lord's Prayer.
Because
the gospel is the presentation of the Lord's Prayer. As you proclaim the gospel, that's the presentation. Okay.
And an interesting thing that we've discovered in this research about the presentation of the Lord's Prayer is that if you celebrate it at a Liturgy of the Word, it still needs to be presided over by a priest.
A priest for both the creed, presentation of the creed, and the presentation of the Lord's Prayer. The RCIA says the priest is the minister. Now with the scrutinies, if you do a Liturgy of the Word, for the scrutinies, a deacon can preside, a priest or a deacon. But I don't know why, for the presentations, it's a priest is required.
And again, all of these rituals can be celebrated during the week at a weekday mass, if assuming it's not a solemnity or where if you have to change the readings, you're allowed to do that. And then, or at a Liturgy of the Word outside of Mass.
Right. All right, then in this imaginary calendar again, I am suggesting that we choose August 14th, which is the Friday before baptism, as a day of prayer and fasting. We ask the entire parish to pray and fast, much like it would be Good Friday. We might even do some of the home rituals that we did for Good Friday. We might, pull those up again and ask people to pray around the cross in particular on this Friday before baptism.
And that's actually a very appropriate day. It's the memorial of St. Maximilian Kolbe.
Yep.
And so this sense of we're not pretending it's Good Friday. That's not the case here. But we are connecting the sense of new life with the Paschal mystery, the dying and rising, the sacrificing that all of us are called to do as those people who have been raised up in this new life of baptism. So that day could be a good focal point for this preparatory fasting, not a penitential fasting, but a preparatory fasting.
Yeah, and in the if we're doing this in normal times, the elect have a 2-day preparatory fast, so on Friday and Saturday. So on Saturday, August 15th, also a day of fasting and preparation, and then we would celebrate the preparation rites on Saturday during the day. So the Ephata rite, if we haven't done it yet, the presentation of the Lord's Prayer, the return of the creed or the recitation of the creed, all those preparatory rites could be done on that Saturday. And then Saturday evening, at either the usual Saturday evening time that if your mass is at 5 or 6 p.m. on Saturday, usually you could celebrate initiation at that time, or you could celebrate it later in the day, later in the evening. If you want to get really radical, you could celebrate it after dark, but that would be very late in most parts of the U.S.
And I don't think that is necessary.
Yeah, right. Not because we're not doing the Easter Vigil, right? Yeah. So we're just doing the rite of baptism, and we've had several questions about where we find the rite of baptism. It's in the RCIA itself. That's where you would celebrate that rite. You would not do the Easter Vigil, so you're not going to have the big fire. You're not going to have the blessing of the candle. You're not going to have all those Old Testament readings, but you will use the rite of baptism from the RCIA itself.
So after the homily, what would happen is the rite of baptism proper. That begins with the calling forward of the candidates, meaning the people who are going to be baptized, the singing of the Litany of Saints, the procession to the font itself, the questioning of renunciation of sin and profession of faith, the baptism, confirmation, followed by intercessions, Eucharistic prayer, and then Eucharist. There was a question, do the people who are going to be baptized celebrate communion? Yes, they must celebrate baptism,
initiation is all three,
and Eucharist at the same celebration.
And I would suggest that we're not receiving the candidates into full communion at this liturgy. We would do that well before so that they can celebrate along with the elected, as the elect come to initiation.
Should we take a break here and do some specific questions before we go into post-baptismal?
Sure. Why don't you choose?
Let's do an audio question. Grace Fernandez, if you are ready, I will send you a unmute request. Grace, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, but I forgot to take my hand down.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you, Grace. Go ahead and mute yourself there. Susan Finley, if you are ready, I'll go ahead and unmute you. Susan?
So I also forgot to take my hand down, but I typed the question in. So they actually, maybe you sparked something. Could you speak a little bit more about the candidates?
Yes.
I do agree that we should receive them separately, but I actually only have one. So following this time frame of August 15th, so could you give me an idea of what would be the most appropriate for her?
Sure. Again, this is all going to vary depending on your circumstances, but in general principle that I would use is those who are already baptized, they don't need to celebrate all these rites along the journey that the elect do, that the unbaptized do. Their ritual journey is much different and much shorter. Now, I know a lot of our places are in the practice of having the candidates travel along with the elect through this ritual journey, but that's not necessary. It's just sort of we've fallen into that habit. And especially since we've had this delay now, if it's not necessary for them, I would say bring them into full communion as soon as possible. So as soon as the restrictions are lifted, maybe not the first Sunday Mass, because everybody's going to be, just crazy to be back together, but maybe depending on the readings and what else is going on in the parish, maybe the third or the fourth Sunday that we're back together again, bring the candidates into full communion.
So on this calendar, we have rite of election on July 5th, and then the next ritual for the elect would be July 19. So maybe that's Sunday
in between those two, or if they're ready before July 5th,
Yeah.
you know, and you can, you know, the restrictions are lifted, then something like that. But I would, you know, it's much more flexible with the baptized candidates.
The principle here is that their journey, the baptized candidates' journey, their schedule and calendar is not necessarily the same or correlating with the unbaptized. And so just disconnect that now and look at what is the best time for them to celebrate their reception or their confirmation and Eucharist. That is as soon as we can possibly do it.
There's been several questions about, you know, my elect has this weird situation or this critical situation. She's a nurse in a high intense place and might get sick.
Or we got military.
Somebody's going to getting called up to the military June 1st. Any of those exceptional people, they can be initiated right away. And so where you would turn to that is in the table of contents, Christian initiation of adults in exceptional circumstances. But they would be the exception. They wouldn't be the rule. So you can, anytime there's a, you know, a serious crisis, you can baptize people as soon as possible.
And so take a look at your RCIA text, especially in the table of contents. Look in part 2.
Yeah.
So that's part 2 of the right for all of these exceptional cases, right? Okay.
There's a question about the difference in the ritual that's in the Roman Missal and some, you know, the Roman Missal has been updated and the RCIA has not. My understanding is what the text that's in the RCIA right now is still the text that's approved by the U.S. bishops for baptism of adults, and that ritual is being updated as well. We don't have the new translation of it yet. When that new translation comes out, then that will change. But right now, we'd still use the ritual that's in the RCIA itself.
But structurally, they're really still the same.
Yeah, it's the texts are different, but the structure is exactly the same.
Okay. Shall we do one more audio? Let's do David Betts, one of our Marist priests. David, I'm going to unmute you if you're ready. Hey, David.
David, are you there?
Oh, maybe not.
Try another one.
Okay.
Here, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Brother David from Chatsworth, California. How you doing?
Hey.
I'm back to the scrutinies and the presentations. It seems like if you're following this sample calendar that you're presenting, it seems like the presentation of the creed can be only done during a weekday rather than a Sunday sometimes. But I'm saying, is there any way can you ever combine the presentations on that one Sunday? Like, for example, that August 9th, can you combine them, or do they have to be separated?
Yeah, they have to be separate, because when you combine them, it's sort of, it's like trying to mix a cake batter and a pot roast. You know, you got two different things, and they don't work together. People do it, but I've been at several of them, and it just really, you know, I mean, you get all the prayers in and stuff, but it's a mishmash. It doesn't really work ritually.
And the other principle here is that these rites work over time. So it's not just checking off the box. It's letting people marinate in between rituals as they reflect on it, as they do mystagogy on that rite and prepare themselves for the next rite.
But you could spread out, you know, the rite says the rite of election piece should be celebrated at least 6 weeks before. But if you've already done the rite of election, you could say do the first scrutiny on that Sunday, and then the next Sunday do the presentation, and the Sunday after that do the second scrutiny. So you can, because we're not in Lent, you can kind of play with the calendar a little bit more.
Okay, that's what I was figuring. You can play with that if
Yep.
Great, thanks, David.
Thanks very much. I'm going to try one off here, see if I can read this. So I have an baptized uncatechized Catholic who would not have been included on the Easter Vigil. Can I include him with the candidates? A baptized uncatechized Catholic is a candidate. Yes, he can be. So I'm guessing that he would be celebrating his confirmation and first Eucharist. And yes, he can be included as part of that. But you're going to need the permission of your bishop for the priest to confirm him, because he's a Catholic. But that's easy to get. You just send a an email to the bishop's office, and every diocese will grant that, except one that I know of, but every other diocese will grant that.
We have one question that we always get, and it's always good to remind people because we have so many people on this call here. The RCIA is an official ritual text of the church, just like you have the rite of ordination, the rite of baptism, the rite of marriage or matrimony. You have the rite of Christian initiation of adults. And so every country has a proper ritual that the Catholic Church uses for the initiation of adults in that country. So this one is for the United States. This one is Australia. The blue book is for our Canadian friends up north. And so make sure you're using the ritual text for your particular country. And all of the rituals and paragraph numbers that we're referring to here come from specifically the United States ritual, but it's pretty much almost the same up until a point with the numbering system. So make sure you get this. Your pastor probably has a copy. You can get a copy at teamrcia.com, but this is what you need in order to understand the rites for initiation.
Somebody else asked if this is all written down somewhere because it's feeling overwhelming. I'm sorry it's overwhelming, and we're trying to make it as simple as possible, but it is all written down. There's a handout in the handout link on the right-hand side there, and you can download it there. You can also go to teamrca.com, and it's I think right now it's the first blog post.
Yes.
We also have a short link to it. Where's the short link?
Yeah, we'll show it to you at the end of our webinar here.
So you can, it's all written down for you.
I know, but this is starting, it's so technical because it's liturgical rubrics, liturgical calendar hierarchy, the RCIA, and we're all just coronavirused out. You know?
Janet's asking how we do mystagogy after initiation. And as I said earlier, we have the option of doing the Easter readings, the season of Easter readings, from, if we're going to celebrate this on August 15th or 16th, we could use the Easter Sunday readings if we wanted to, and the next Sunday do the second Sunday of Easter readings, and so on. So we have the 8 weeks of Easter readings, and that those Sunday celebrations using the readings of Easter is mystagogy. The rite says that the place of mystagogy is the Sunday masses of Easter. And then if we're moving this whole thing to another time, then it would be those Sunday masses where we're doing the Easter readings. So the proclamation of the readings, the singing of the songs that go with those readings, the preaching that goes along with those readings, and the mystagogical reflection on those readings, all of that is the mystagogical post-baptismal catechesis. And that's what we could do with the elect in this weird time.
And if you didn't want to change all the readings, you can pick one of the Easter Sunday readings, meaning the Sundays of the Easter season, whether it's the gospel reading from year A or the first reading.
In year A in particular, if you do the second reading, it's from the Epistle of 1 Peter. And those readings from the Epistle of 1 Peter are really particularly great for talking about discipleship and baptismal priesthood and what this new life is going to be like. And so you could just choose that reading and preach on that and do mystagogical reflection on that. That would be fabulous.
Yeah. So shall we do just a few more questions here? I highlighted a couple there.
The slides, will the slides be in a follow-up? The recording will be in a follow-up.
And you'll see the slides.
Yeah, and then and you can download the text where we have all the dates.
Will has a question. Do you envision the assembly renewing their baptismal promises as part of the baptism of the baptismal liturgy?
Yes, it's in the rite. That's included in the rite. Yes.
Yeah. So all of the things, all of the what we call the explanatory rites. So the receiving the baptismal candle, the garment, the baptismal garment, and then with the faithful to renew, renew their baptismal promises with the faithful. All of that is still part of that ritual itself. And so, yes. Okay.
Maribel's asking about what if the August 15th date doesn't work. This calendar is just an example. So pick the date that's going to work. Have your bishop or your diocesan office pick a date that's going to work in your diocese, and from there build out the calendar. working.
Yep.
And just watch out, if you move the calendar one way or the other, some of these Sundays might fall on a solemnity or when the readings cannot be changed. You just want to watch for that. But otherwise, you could check, if it goes that long, you could pick a Sunday in November as the day of baptism, and then, work the calendar backwards and forwards based on that.
Nancy is asking, so what are we doing with the elected candidates now? Should we be meeting?
Yes, so there's, again, some posts on our website about that and some videos that we did about that, but ideally they would be doing whatever the rest of your parish is doing. So whatever resources you've provided for the domestic church to continue in their faith, they should be doing that. And then if you want to do a little extra and you have the capability, do some video conference meetings. If you can't meet every week, then every other week or once a month, to kind of look at the readings for the Sundays, to do some mystagogical reflection on what's going on in their homes. We did a video where we did some examples of pick a symbol like light and do some mystagogical reflection on that, things like that.
Yeah. And not just Mass, watching the live stream Masses that are taking place, whether from your parish or another source, but also celebrating home rituals, Liturgy of the Hours, Liturgy of the Word. Let's do a
One more
phone
audio.
call.
Yeah.
Elizabeth O'Leary, I'm going to unmute you here. Hello, Elizabeth. Are you there? You might have to say yes, unmute me. Elizabeth? No. Okay. Let me try Catherine. Catherine Fathom. I'm going to unmute you, Catherine. Hello. Catherine.
Hi,
Hi.
Catherine.
Hello, I am from Victoria Diocese.
Oh, very
Hi.
good.
And I'm so pleased that I had the opportunity of attending your workshop in Vancouver. last
Wonderful.
year. Two things that have come to mind with us. We have celebrated the first scrutiny. We've gone as far as the first scrutiny. And so what I did was, because I had the material prepared, I sent it out to our we have 4 elect. So I sent it out to the 4 elect. So we have been just communicating through email, because of course we're closed off also. I have the information that you're sharing is just so totally beneficial, because I didn't know what to do with regard to the celebration, whether you would just do kind of a shortcut baptism confirmation kind of thing, or whether you use the rite. So this is awesome, and I just really wanted to thank you for your continuous help in this area.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad it's helpful.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm so grateful.
I want to make sure we get to this question. Jess is saying, I just want to confirm that we can set this up in our own parish and don't need to check it out with the bishop. And that's not true. I said that your bishop may decide that for you, but that just depends on your bishop. So the default is that the bishop will choose, or his office, but the bishop's office will choose a date for baptism. And I know some bishops will then use that authority, hand that authority on to their pastors to choose the date, but that's not a given. So you'll always need to check with your diocesan office to see what the rule is for your diocese.
So you'll find that directive in the RCIA, paragraph 34.2. The adaptations by the bishop. It says it pertains to the bishop for his own diocese to decide whether and when, as circumstances warrant, the entire rite of Christian initiation may be celebrated outside the usual outside the usual times. And so he would help you determine when this would happen for your diocese. But once that's determined, you take this kind of sample calendar and transpose it to the date that your bishop has determined.
Yeah, Will is asking, this is an interesting question. Let's say we're all, we can all come back to Mass, but the bishop is restricting the cup because there's still some coronavirus issues around. Should we wait till the restrictions from the cup are lifted? I would say yes, because we want the elect to celebrate Eucharist as fully as possible. Now, there's lots of pastoral reasons why you might decide to go ahead and do it anyway, and I don't know your particular situation, but it is a general principle. I would say we want to provide the elect as full a celebration as possible, and that should be our goal. The same principle, general principle, would apply. Let's say the restrictions are lifted to the point where we can have small group meetings. So you can have 10 or 20 or 50 people, but then the state is saying you can't have meetings larger than that. Well, then it'd be possible to do initiation in some places, but would we? You know, and I again say as a general principle, we want to wait till we can all come back together so the elect have as full a celebration as possible.
And you want to attend to the needs of your particular elect.
Mm-hmm.
If they are feeling just the sense of despair and overwhelming sadness, and this would really be for their benefit to do it as soon as possible, that is your call. You should really consider that and pray with them and discern if that's a possibility. But if they're willing to wait for a fuller celebration of the ritual, then make sure you give them that opportunity and let them do that. I just wanted to mention Jimena, who is a wonderful colleague. She is saying that the current circumstances offer us an excellent opportunity to think about the year-round catechumenate, and that is really what this virus is teaching us.
The silver lining.
The normative way for initiation is not about a calendar, but about the progress for each person that happens all year round. And so we want to make sure that that is being communicated really clearly here.
So our time is up, and we want to honor the time that we said we would do, especially for those of you that have other meetings and places to go. So we're going to sign off here. But if we didn't get to your question, or you have another question that comes up later that you think of, you can always reach us by email.
Mm-hmm. But one thing we wanted to reflect on is what would happen if we actually really discerned carefully how to celebrate fully these rites. And I think what will happen is that not just our elect and candidates will be relieved and transformed by the celebration of all these rites, but our entire community will have a renewed sense and appreciation for the initiation journey and for the profound nature of ritual.
Imagine what it would be like if we did wait a little bit. We didn't do this the first or second or third week when we could come back together, but we had some transition time. We got used to the elect being back in our community. We had some rituals for the elect, even if they're not all the scrutinies. We did just a couple of things with the elect before their baptism. And then we have a date we're looking forward to. We're all anticipating, we're building up to it. We all come together for this initiation celebration. It could just be really transformative for all of our parishes.
So I know we had a ton of questions that we never got. Email us, but do you want to stay like 5 more minutes to do just
okay, we'll stay. If you need to go, we understand that. We'll stay another 5 minutes or so to try to catch up on some questions. If you need to go and we didn't get to your question, again, email us and we'll do our best to get back to you.
And also look for your email in your email inbox in the next day or two, or no later than next Monday in the newsletter for the link to this recording. I know some of you had difficulty with sound coming in and out. I wish I could have helped you with that, but it's just technology. So there. But look for the email link to the recording and share that with anyone who needs to. First off, before we continue with just a few more questions, thank you for everything, really, during this stressful time for everyone. You have been, you have stepped up in your creativity, your perseverance, your joy, and your careful discernment of what is best to do for your community. So thank you for being that presence of Christ when we cannot gather together, for your elect, for your candidates, for their godparents and families. Just thank you.
Thank you.
We did have a couple of questions that I think our usual questions anytime we celebrate initiation. What about vacations and schedules? And,
Yeah, you're
people
gonna
just not able to
right.
be there.
You're gonna run into that. So again, you're gonna have to pastorally figure this out in your particular place. But once the bishop decides on a date for baptism, it's like my vacation schedule got screwed up this year because of the virus. So people are going to have to adapt in this weird year to whatever the situation is in your diocese.
Yeah, and you can once a schedule is set, you can announce that to your elect, to their godparents, to their families, and make it a priority for them. And if you have to move things around, we have that freedom now, because we're not limited here to the Lenten season. You can adapt this calendar for your particular needs in this case. So be as flexible as you can possibly be, while honoring the wisdom of the ritual itself.
Somebody's asking about when we start the next group of RCA folks. And so again, that's a little bit like Jimena's point. We're always in the midst of evangelizing, welcoming people into the catechumenate. It's an ongoing process. So if I had my ideal, we would never have a start date. Every day is a day when we are in formation. Now, it doesn't mean we're necessarily meeting every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. But our parishes are formative in all the stuff that we do. So we're, to the extent that they want to, we're getting the seekers involved in the life of the parish, and that becomes their formation. We set them up with a sponsor, we set them up with some guidance, but there is no start date. We're always in this process.
Yeah. Brian has already left, but he asked a good question. What if your bishop does not set a date? What if he doesn't say anything about this?
Well, I think that's just delegation by silence.
Well, it's also, you can ask your bishop.
Yeah, you
just send him an email, ask your pastor to give him a call, say, dear bishop, we would like to celebrate initiation on this date along with the rituals preceding that. Is that okay with you?
And if he doesn't answer, I think that's okayness,
You got to determine about your own bishop.
Yeah.
So there, if he doesn't say anything, just ask him.
But you've got to baptize, right? You can't not baptize them. Right?
And sometimes bishops don't even know that
we had somebody say that. We had somebody say, my bishop didn't realize he was this involved until.
Yes, and so be gentle with your bishop as well, but asking him and involving him in this process could be a wonderful blessing for him that you can give to him. So
Brian is saying, so we could have inquiry via Zoom at this point in time. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's what's happening everywhere. Yeah. Everything is happening.
I got questions.
All right.
My parish does year round. If you're curious to know more, people can contact Bob at ccasta.org if you want to know more about year round.
Bob at ccasta.org.
Yeah. Why don't you type that in? Can you type it in? So
sure.
everybody sees it?
I will do that. I'll see if I can do that.
Let's see. The rest of the questions are above the fold, I think.
Oops. Sorry, Bob. Let me do that again. To all. Okay, so I put Bob's contact there.
There's also a bunch of posts on our website that are about year-round stuff, so you can see it there too.
All right, so I've scrolled up just a little bit. We'll do maybe one more.
Okay, pick one.
Rhonda, aloha from Maui. So glad you're here, Rhonda. First, just want to say thank you. The bishop in the Diocese of Honolulu in his last mandate did say that he was going to keep us updated as to when and how we will continue with the RCI preparation and celebration once they're able to. And so that's wonderful. Your bishop is taking initiative in that. And so again, if your bishop has been silent, just send him a note and ask for his wisdom. He would appreciate being asked. I think most bishops would do that. Anything else you want to say here? Linda was asking, she's been searching the RCI text still confused as to where to find the correct version of the rite when celebrated during a Sunday liturgy. So you would go to the baptismal rite proper, starting at celebration of baptism, paragraph 218, and that's 218 in the United States. That is what you would use at whatever mass you would be celebrating baptism for your catechumens, okay? So paragraph 218 in the RCIA, that is the official ritual for adult baptism.
Patty is saying we use the Liguori leaflets. Can we go over those mystagogy topics with our group at this time? In general, Patty, mystagogy is not topic based. It's a celebration of a rite. So the Sunday masses of Easter, the celebration of those masses is mystagogy. Now, if you want to do a catechetical reflection, a mystagogical process where you're reflecting with everybody on the readings for the Easter season, you can certainly do that. And if the Liguori leaflets help you to do that, then that's great. But mystagogy itself in the rite is the masses of the Easter season.
And we'll end with this question from Claudia. We'll celebrate our military elect by the 3rd week of May. I'm so excited for you, Claudia. Should we live stream his sacraments? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and we want to see. We want to be part of that. So send us a link. But whenever the sacraments happen, God's grace will be present, and God's grace is present now in our waiting. So let's keep praying for one another. Let's pray especially for those who are sick, for those who are dying, for those who are caring for them, and everyone who grieves, because this is the Easter season. This is our season of the promise of the resurrection.
Yes.
And even in our sadness, we believe in that hope. So let's keep one another in prayer.
So email us, but wash your hands before you do.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right, take care. God bless.
Have a great day. Bye.